saying how you can't diagnose autism just using a criteria because autism is a neurodevelopmental condition. You need other people on board. You need to find out about a person has had difficulties since childhood, because autism doesn't just come out of the blue. Difficulties are going to be there for since childhood. Because some people in adulthood might display symptoms of autism and not actually be autistic. Because when you look into it, those symptoms weren't there in childhood, and they were obviously going to be symptoms of another condition. Bearing in mind that a lot of the symptoms of autism can occur in other conditions for different reasons, which is why, again, you can't just use this checklist criteria to say so-and-so's got autism without finding out their background, which only a trained clinician can do, because assessments are very, very, very basically people have to go to not medical school. They have to go. They have to go to. They have to be trained in the use of these in the use of certain tests that are done during assessment, and there are certain questions they have to ask, and they have to ask appropriate questions. And like I say, the criteria is just a guide as to what questions they can ask. It helps them, but it's not the actual assessment itself is more than a criteria. That's what these ignorant people don't seem to understand. And by saying it's just an easy exercise, they really don't know what assessment involves. And basically, they're sending out a really bad message to society, because autism is a serious medical condition, and it's not diagnosed easily. Like when I was assessed, I spent several hours with an autism specialist, and then I saw a psychiatrist, psychologist, speech and language therapist, basically all these other people who had to speak to my parents and stuff, and that took like half a day. So seriously, it's not a and then I saw another psychologist as well after that, who was like assessing my daily living skills and stuff. So it's really not a simple thing. It should be. I know some people have had really quick diagnoses, and I'm like surprised some of them like so quick, and like there aren't sometimes there aren't really some clinicians aren't always that good, and that's true, and that's not great, and it should be standardised more, and everyone should get a really good assessment. And unfortunately, in some parts of the UK, that isn't always a given, which is wrong. But a good assessment should never just rely on the criteria. That's not what autism assessment involves. Okay, I think I said what I needed to say on that one. The other thing is that a good assessment should also ideally involve more than one clinician. Again, it isn't always possible, but ideally more than one clinician should be involved to protect against bias, and they usually go away and discuss it anyway. In my case, it was quite a straightforward assessment because it's very obvious I'm autistic, but the person who assessed me said that he didn't have any doubts, basically, but I wanted to be assessed properly, because to me that's really important. And I guess, again, that's why I'm so against self-diagnoses, because don't these people have any doubts? Like, even though I've been diagnosed, I still sometimes have doubts, although not that many, because it's pretty obvious I'm autistic, but I do still sometimes have doubts, because it's like no blood test or anything. And like, I sort of feel, don't these people have any doubts? Like, it's kind of quite weird, like how self-assured they are. I could never be that self-assured, even if I was diagnosed with something. Like, I need to have so much evidence to kind of like assuage any sense of doubt I've had, which is part of the reason why even after I was diagnosed autistic, I ended up having another cognitive assessment and other things just to verify my issues, basically. So yeah, I'm surprised anyone can self-diagnose. I just don't understand their logic, personally. It's really wrong, and dishonest, and if you ask me, not ethical. But yeah, I think I've said enough about that. So I wanted to carry on talking about autism and empathy, although I don't think I'm going to have much time to say on this video, because I've spent a lot of it talking about there was one thing I wanted to say, which is a comment, responding to a comment, one of your comments, saying about whether or not my lack of shame as a child and in my early teens might have protected me against the worst effects of like teasing and bullying. And I think you're absolutely right. I thought about this, and I think actually, yeah, it did protect me, because I was very lucky as an autistic child in that I never had depression. There are lots of autistic kids who get really depressed or like have really bad self-esteem issues, and I think generally those ones who often have more awareness at a young age and might have like their sense of shame might kick in at an earlier age, sort of thing. I think I was quite lucky in that my sense of shame didn't kick in until like my late teens, not properly kicking until my late teens. So as a child, I basically didn't have a sense of shame, and I wasn't aware of like other people. And because I wasn't aware of other people, and because I didn't kind of like have any sense of embarrassment or any sense of like needing to fit in, in one sense that made me stand out like a sore thumb, and was probably part of the reason why I didn't have any friends. But I think actually it protected me because I was actually a very happy child, and I was a very happy child, despite the fact I didn't really have any friends. I was never unhappy. Other people were concerned about me, but I was kind of oblivious to that. I didn't even start to realise I was different till I was about 9 or 10, and even when I began to think I was different, I didn't think it was anything to do with me. Like, it didn't affect my sense of self. I didn't really feel like a bad person or anything. I kind of started to blame my parents when I was about 11 and 12 because I thought they hadn't socialised me properly. When I became more aware of socialising difficulties. But again, I never really kind of got down about other kids' reactions to me, because it didn't really bother me, because I didn't really have a social instinct where it would bother me. I was happy doing my own thing, very interested in Kate Winslet and babies. I wasn't really thinking about being weird. I knew I was weird, but it didn't really kind of bother me. I was too in my own bubble. So yeah, I think you are right that this delayed sense of... I do have a sense of shame now, by the way, but it's just late to develop. I'm now very self-aware, but it was late to develop, and I think the fact it was late to develop actually protected me from being unhappy, because I had a very happy childhood despite my problems. So my childhood was good. I missed out on a lot of things, obviously, a lot of social stuff that other kids enjoyed, but that didn't bother me. So yeah. So yeah, that's why self-awareness can be a mixed thing, and certainly as I've become more self-aware, since sort of my late teens, where that self-awareness has kind of actually gone from one extreme to the other, almost non-existence to kind of almost possibly an abnormally heightened self-awareness. It's gone from one extreme to the other in a way. Certainly as I have become more self-aware, my anxiety has definitely increased. I mean, I've always had anxiety, but the more self-aware I've become, the more anxious I've become. So that shows, I think, self-awareness can be correlated with mental health problems. Although thankfully I've avoided depression, touch wood. For me it's just extreme anxiety and OCD. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else really. Yeah, I wanted to talk about my caring behaviour, but I think that's going to have to wait until another time, because I just want to say one thing though. Some people, not necessarily in the neurodiversity movement, but they don't always understand when I say I have problems with empathy. Again, they're probably interpreting it differently to how I interpret it. But they'll come out with things and say, maybe there's more going on for you and stuff like that. No, there fucking isn't. Excuse my French. So I shouldn't swear. Sometimes you just have to, it just feels good to get, swear words because I get angry, you know what I mean? Sometimes swearing kind of helps, so apologies to those who don't like swearing. I apologise. I realise that people might be watching this who don't like swearing, so I apologise. I don't tend to swear much, but sometimes you just have to, just get it out. No, there's nothing, it's autism, basically. Simon Van-Cohen, 0 degrees of empathy, it's autism. There's nothing more going on for me, it's autism. I think it's just these people cannot handle the fact that, that some autistics, actually I'll say a lot of autistics because it's part of the original definition of autism, actually do struggle with empathy. And funny enough, these ones who don't seem to think it is part of autism, Ironically, some of them actually do struggle with empathy, a lot of empathy problems, but I just don't have any self-awareness at all. So in other words, they're struggling with empathy, and I'm aware that they're struggling with empathy because I see it, and they're not actually aware they're struggling with empathy. Whereas I just happen to be very aware that I'm struggling with empathy. So in that respect, some of them are actually very, very autistic, ironically, but aren't aware of their struggle with empathy. But if they generally don't have a struggle with empathy, then the question is, are they really autistic? Because struggling with empathy is part of the definition of autism. Cognitive empathy is. Like I said, affective empathy, Simon Van-Cohen says more research needs to be done. But he does imply that it may well be a part of autism for some people. Not the defining feature like cognitive empathy, but so in other words, you can be autistic with intact affective empathy, but he does imply that for those who struggle with affective empathy, it is still part of their autism, or at least some types of autism can affect both. I'd actually agree with him. I think autism can affect affective empathy as well as cognitive empathy. So I do agree with Simon Van-Cohen. I do think more research needs to be done. And to those people who say more is going on for me in autism, no, it is not. I'm autistic, that's my problem. I struggle with empathy, that's my problem. If you don't like it, go back and read Simon Van-Cohen, 0 Degrees of Empathy. It's all in there. That's all I have to say about it. So thank you for watching.